Hello and welcome to Tech for Non-Techies, the only podcast that demystifies the fast-growing technology sector. I'm your host, Sofia Matveeva, Chicago-based MBA and tech entrepreneur. My aim here is to give you the skills, knowledge and confidence to find opportunities in the tech sector, whether that's through founding a company, getting a dream job, or bringing a fresh perspective to your work. For this episode, I spoke to Robyn, the CEO and founder of Her, the world's largest brand for LGBTQ women and queer people. Their app has around 5 million people using it in the world, and the dating community is probably the most famous bit of it. Robyn is also an alumna of the super prestigious Combinator, the Silicon Valley accelerator, and she has raised millions from investors. She is a non-technical founder. That's why I was so interested in speaking to her. Her background is actually in branding. So this is a great episode to listen to if you have an idea, but you don't know how to get started with the tech, or you've already started working on your app or your web-based business and you don't know if you're on the right tracks. So without further ado, here's Robyn.
I'm often like, whoa, how the fuck did I get here? This is an unexpected career path. But I think that I didn't ever really particularly ever have a planned career path. Like when I was younger, I was like interested in different fields, and it would be like, oh, I think I want to be a banker because I want to make loads of money, or I want to be a lawyer because that's maybe like a more intellectual version of being a banker with loads of money, or I want to work in advertising because that's really creative. And that was just like growing up. And I think I went to university, spent 3 years getting drunk and partying, and I don't think for any period of time really thought about my career afterwards. And then I was at a 21st birthday party. I was due to graduate in like 2 weeks. And hadn't thought at all about jobs or what I would do, and was sat next to someone I went to school with who was like, oh, have you got a job? I was like, nah, not thinking about that yet. And he was like, oh, I actually work for a recruitment firm and I work with this like advertising post-production company. Do you want to go work with them? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? Got nothing else to do. So, did the interview, got the job with them, graduated on the Wednesday, started with this company on the Monday. And everything just kind of like fell from one thing to the next after that. So while I was working with that group, one of our clients was the branding agency. And so I was working with them a lot. They then hired me. So I moved to the branding agency. One of my clients was a dating business. And so I learned a bunch about the dating industry. And then I think there's like no doubt that like getting that background insight gave me a lot of, and I wasn't consciously aware of it, but it definitely like fueled my understanding of the industry and desire to like think about something for women in it. So decided to start making Her. And so there was like a couple of first years when we actually made a different product called Datch, and Datch was my first attempt or like at addressing the problem and trying to think about what was the best solution for it. And that didn't work. And so learned about the tech industry, learned about like what it was I was actually getting into. And then in 2015, we launched Her. And so, Her is now 5 years old. That's right. Yeah, 5 years old. And moved to the US and now running the company out of here.
That's quite a journey, Robyn. So actually, I'm just curious, where is everybody right now? So I'm in London. Robyn is in San Francisco. I'm just, if you just write where you are, that would be super fabulous. I'm just curious, how did you go from you're in this branding agency and you're working with a dating agency client? I mean, there are lots of people who worked in branding agencies and have had dating agency clients. Not many of them have gone and said, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. Like what happened?
I think there was a bit of context, and again, it's stuff that like you're not fully like conscious of. I wasn't like aware of it happening at the time, and like I now look back on it and go, oh, I think that's what was happening. So I think I was like 24, 25, and I think in my job I was like looking for something else. Like I'd kind of like got to a point where I was quite comfortable doing what I was doing. I'd been asking the MD of the agency to like talk me through balance sheets and like explain to me how this company runs and how does this agency work. And I'd shifted roles slightly to try something different. Like personally in my life, I'd started doing triathlons to like, I think there was like some kind of fix of like challenge and like push that I was looking for. And then when we were working with the agency, with the like dating website company, one of the guys in my agency who was working on the project with me, he was using Grindr, and I think we just thought it was like a really interesting problem. Like at the time, the first inspiration was, this was like before Tinder was out, so it was really like a Match.com world and an eHarmony world. We were like, isn't it phenomenal that every dating site exists to make you believe that being single is bad, and that like you need to change that, and you are going to be happier and better if you find another person. And there's no company that like celebrates being single, and Grindr almost did quite a good job of that. It was like empowering, and like it felt like this cool secret tool that guys had that they could meet and do whatever the fuck they wanted, and straight people didn't have it. And I was like, that's just like it's amazing, and it's like incredible and fascinating to like see it. So me and that friend started, and we were in the pub one night, and like we'd pitched all these brand concepts to the client. They hadn't accepted any of them. They didn't decide to go ahead with any of the like brand like propositions that we'd suggested. So we were in the pub afterwards, and we were chatting, and me and my friend were like, you know, young and getting on a high horse and being like, they're fucking idiots, we know everything, like I can't believe they didn't approve this. And our creative director was like, well, if you're so fucking clever, why don't you two go and make something then? And we were like, fine, we will. And so yeah, and so like the next day, me and this friend were chatting, and we were like, why don't we do it? Why don't we actually, like, we just believed in it. I think like truly believed that it was crazy. And so the two of us started working on something, and we'd like go for breakfast once a week, and we'd make like PowerPoints about stuff, and it was all driven around branding. So at the time I just didn't know anything about tech. So it was about like the positioning, the proposition, like what's the space we want to occupy.
So was the original thing kind of a fun dating app or fun dating community for straight people, or were you already going for queer women?
And him and I were thinking about an idea. It was just it was for like everyone, so we didn't think about it based on any demographic. It was like, how do we like celebrate singledom and like celebrate the experience of being single? So I think for like 4 or 5 months, we started like developing this idea. We started trying to find different contractors to find out how much would it cost to build this thing, like talking to different agencies. And as time went on, as it got closer, it kind of basically panned out between the two of us that I wanted to do more of this and was really enjoying it and wanted to spend more time on it and like had higher expectations. And my friend was like wanting to do less and less. And eventually he was just like, look, I'm going to actually move to Paris and join a different like agency. And I just want that kind of change in my life. So just that like path went in different directions. And I think, you know, it's good. We hadn't got too far down the road that it was like fine and easy to split. And we kind of agreed that. And so then I was doing it myself, and I realized like, I think the real upside of that was I was suddenly like, oh, I've got no one to talk to about this. I'm fully by myself. I need to find other folks to get advice from and figure out how the fuck I do this if I don't have that one friend to like bounce ideas around with. So I started looking up all the different meetup groups for different tech events. And so in London at the time, there was this one that was like Burger Monday nights, and there was Silicon Drink About, and the like Hacker News like events were happening. So I started just going to a lot of those, started asking friends that I knew if they knew anyone that worked in tech, and just to like start having more conversations. And then I also got, so one of my friends who was at the marketing agency with me, he had left a year previously to start a startup. So I reached out to him, and he ended up becoming like one of my closest friends. And so just, you know, people started sharing advice, like explaining product, explaining like how to think about product, like what product design was, like what engineering is, like back end to front end, and just starting to like understand a bit of the vocabulary around it. And then I, one of the guys that I met at the Burger Night Monday, he was an engineer, and he was like definitely experienced. I don't think he'd done YC, but he just like knew his shit about startups and had a really good blog. So I asked him for an advice session, and I was still talking about the like generalist product at this point, or thinking about it. And he's Austrian, and he was just like, this is not going to work. This is fucked. You can't do this. Like, you're trying to do too many things. You're trying to think about like the lifestyle of like being single and the experience of being single, and you're trying to match people. You've got to just do one thing. And so after that conversation, I went home, and I was like down and out, and I like drank a bottle of wine and was like, all right, what should I be thinking about then here to like make this compelling and make it mean something?
Right. I just want to interrupt. And you were working your full-time job while you were doing this. So yeah, basically it's this, the wine drinking and the tech meetups that are happening after work.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
everything was after work in the evenings. And so then, I got really drunk and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, one, there's like an industry and space that I know a hell of a lot more about, which is the lesbian and queer side, because I'm spending my social life there. I use this product called Gaydar Girls, which is horrific. It's something that I care about. It seems crazy to me that like no one's done here, and it actually means something. It means something to me, and it will mean something to the space to do this and just do a dating app that's really focused on that. So that was my like drunk epiphany moment. And so kind of like almost in the next week, I was like rethinking everything. I was like, can I keep the name the same? Like, do I change what I'm doing? Like, what do I want to do with this whole thing? And so then probably over the next like couple of months started to like realign and replan of like, right, this is actually what for me, like my drive, my purpose of what it is I want to look at. So, so then started doing it. And so at that point, what was I doing? Like,
so you decided to focus on that market that you knew, but were you what were you thinking of doing? Were you already thinking, okay, I want to build an app that does this? Or were you thinking I want to do events? Because I'm just curious, you had the idea for a business, and were you going product first, or were you going to test other kind of ways of doing it first?
I definitely had in my head that I wanted to make an app on because I was reading so much about startups. I was reading all these books about how to do like customer development and how to like validate your idea. So I did like 100 different customer interviews, and I pretended to myself that I was looking to see if that was the right solution. Really, I wasn't actually listening to what they were saying properly. I was just like, I'm building an app. Like, I know that's what I'm going to do. But I think that's also because there were enough like market examples to know that it was validated by other businesses. It was like, clearly this works. There are straight ones. There are gay ones. Why the fuck isn't there one for women? And so I didn't care almost what people said, because I was like, it's so fucking obvious. And it meant that I actually missed a bunch of other signals that I think I could have learned from, because I was just so headstrong that like that was what I needed to do. So if I talk to other founders now, I'm always like, listen to the problem, like try and understand the problem the best way you can. I assume that it would still have ended up in the same place, but there were like interesting things that I probably could have learned at the time that I wasn't paying attention to.
Would you mind going into that? Because, by the way, Nasi, hi, I hope you won't mind me saying this, Nasi, London Business School student at the moment, and interested in entrepreneurship and doing something himself. And I know we've talked about technology a lot. And so I definitely also had the same thing. It's like, you have an idea and then you want to make an app. And then, even if you're listening to other people, what they're saying, you're like, yeah, app. Yeah. I'm also now like, okay, well, was that necessarily the right order? It's definitely a product that needed to exist. I'm not sure if it was the right order. So what are your learnings here?
I think like number one to say as well is that like although I can now look back and say, oh, I wasn't paying attention to the signals, the like ferocious like drive that I had that this was right was way more valuable than like opening up a bit of opportunity for that perspective. Like the fact that I was so headstrong this was right gave me so much forcing power. So I think it's like, it's not terrible if you do have that. There are so many upsides that come from that. But I think the signals that I missed, things are just like understanding the actual like dating patterns of women. I wasn't really listening to understand like what makes you say yes to a profile, like what are you trying to message, what's your emotions when you are sending that, how do you feel empowered, do you feel insecure? Because I think that would have just helped when thinking about the product experience, understanding those like feelings underneath. And while I was listening to them, I had this belief that like women did want to have like empowered casual sex and have the opportunity to have hookups. And when I asked people about it, they were like, fuck yeah, on a Friday night, I want to look at a map of like where all the women are and be able to go there to be able to like make out with someone and hook up. And I was like, yes, it's exactly what I thought. But like, actually, if I've been asking the right questions, the reality was they love the idea of doing that, but rarely to never in their behavior do they actually do that. And so I wasn't asking just like, so I was like, oh, cool, you love it. And I wasn't like, cool, when was the last time you did it? Because then it'd been like, oh, like never. And it just would have like explained so much more to me. But I was like, yeah, great, they want that. They want this to happen. And so yeah, the kind of the actual experience and like the emotions and that like very like human research piece of it, I think would have been really helpful.
It's interesting that you say that because I think a lot of the people who, come to Tech for Non-Techies and are listening to this kind of thing, they tend to definitely be the way I used to be when I first started, was like, you're so insecure about the fact that you don't know about technology that you ignore everything else, and that you basically over-index on the tech and then actually forget the human aspect. And I mean, I know that's definitely put some spokes in my wheels, and what you seem to be saying, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but what you seem to be saying is understand the psychology and focus on that before you actually focus on technology. Is that right?
I think it's a combination of all of it. Like, even though I wasn't listening, the truth was there was like the market validation there. I could see these other products that were succeeding for other demographics. So like the logic just kind of made sense. Like the evidence was almost there. But I think the human, and to even have an idea in the first place, you've already jumped to an execution. Like you already see it. So it's really difficult to unwind that, especially if you're a first-time founder. I think once you get onto your like second or third business, you realize how easy it is to not get attached to it, because you see how much it changes. And so there just really isn't any point. And you also realize that you almost are always wrong about what you first think is right. There is a real artistry to like being able to talk to customers and really understand how they're feeling. And even now, I don't think I'm that great at it. Like I always give the excuse that our space is, has a lot of like psychology play in it, because it's around your like love emotions, it's around your like insecurities. And so it's like hard to work, if you're doing like an enterprise SaaS software, you can probably ask someone like, why did you click on buy? And they can probably tell you. There's like a little bit of psychology stuff going on there, but it's a much more like rational decision. Whereas ours is like so driven by emotions. You're really having to like get under the psychology there. So that's why I still don't think I'm great at it. I'm much rather running stuff through like data experiments now. But I think remembering the humanity and that it is ultimately people. Every time we do like a round of customer development, I'm always like, yes, oh, this is so good. Just like remembering that these are just people and there is real commonality into what they want to get out of the product and what their experiences of using the product right now. So a balance of all of it. It's the people, and ideally when you have enough users, the data, and being able to see like in bulk numbers what's working and what's not working, and being able to do fast tests.
I'm seeing a lot of people who are working on their side hustles during isolation, and I think they're thinking of starting their web-based businesses. So what advice would you have to them?
I think kind of related even just to what you said, which is just keep learning. Like there is so many resources and stuff online. There are so many courses, blog posts, like schools, online schools, one-off courses. There's so much that you can do. Just keep learning. Like don't expect to learn it all in one go. It's incremental. You will build a knowledge base. Everything you learn when you start, you're going to have to relearn again in like 5 or 6 months, because it will actually have context and will mean something. But everything is available. I believe everything is available. It just takes time and commitment to actually, and like a lot of like hustle to get to a place where you get to turn it into something and it gets to mean something. But it only starts if you're going to invest the time and the effort to make it happen.
If you want to hear more of this conversation, then join me at Tech for Non-Techies. You'll hear Robyn talk about her time at Y Combinator, how she made her first tech hires, fundraising, and the big pivot that she had to make that led to her being an excellent success. Your Tech for Non-Techies membership also gets you unique learning materials and interviews with investors, designers, and product managers, and other non-technical founders to help you understand how to go from idea to a live product. Tech for Non-Techies is your jargon-busting best friend in tech. Join us.